Welcome to another episode of Behind the Business presented by Gore Mutual. I'm your host, Ian McLean, President and CEO of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. This podcast is recorded on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. Each week I sit down for candid conversations where we go beyond the boardroom and behind the business to uncover the real stories of Waterloo Region's business community. Today we're taking you into the cockpit of the global aviation sector with someone who has not only lived its evolution but shaped some of the industry's most defining moments. Our guest is John Thomas. He's the CEO of Waterloo Region's newest airline, Connect Airlines. John is a globally recognized aviation strategist, former CEO of Virgin Australia Airlines, and the advisor behind major transformations at Delta, United, British Airways, Qantas, and more. He's launched airlines, led billion-dollar turnarounds, engineered game-changing joint ventures, and even created the ancillary revenue model that transformed how modern airlines operate. Today, we're unpacking the journey behind his extraordinary career, the early days of entrepreneurship, the principles he applies when fixing complex businesses, what the future of air travel looks like, and what regions like Waterloo Region can expect and think about when it comes to connectivity and competitiveness. It's a rare chance to get a truly global perspective on leadership, innovation, and building resilient organizations from someone who has influenced the sector at every altitude. So join me as we go behind the business with John Thomas of Connect Airlines. Well, John, we're excited to have you here in Waterloo Region. I know you were here recently, and thanks for sticking around for a few minutes or a few days to have some conversation with business leaders, but to come on and do an episode of the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Great, thanks, Ian.
So we had our Vision 1 Million event, and John Torrey Jr. from Pivot Airlines, and you were joined me on stage, and we you told the story of Connect Airlines, why it's based here, the connection with Pivot being the operations side of the airline, which is a great Canadian story, based here at Waterloo Region. All of those things are really important. So we'll get to those things. But I'm fascinated because, for those that are listening, they won't see that he says he's been in the airline industry for 50 years. He does not look like he's old enough to have been in business for 50 years, but you've had a front row seat to global aviation, and the story is fascinating. Tell us what sparked your interest in aviation, and what got you started, when you got started, and what's kept you anchored in the sector. Because I think, as you've said a number of times, the airline business is not an easy one, to be successful at. But tell us how you got started, what sparked your interest.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I was born in a little country town in Australia called Wagga Wagga, and moved to Sydney at a young age, but still had a lot of interest in the country. And I used to fly a lot back and forwards, and to me, flying or airlines was all about connecting people. Mm-hmm. We used to have a property down in the country. My mother used to go and look after that property, so I'd literally be
back and forth.
And so when I got old enough, actually between high school and university, where I was still just under 17, I managed to get my private pilot's license, and really the rest is history. And it really is the joy of connecting people, and that's really it's really the thing that keeps me going on it.
Now, we were talking before we went on, and I just came back from Australia and New Zealand, and you said when you come to Canada, you kind of feel like you're home.
Yep.
And when I went to Australia, I said, other than driving on the wrong side of the road, it felt a lot like Canada.
Yep.
And by that, Australia is a very coastal country because all the big cities are around the water.
Yep.
It's not quite the same in Canada, but we're a country of 5 or 10, I guess, big cities, and then a lot of small, rural, lot of country, and that's very much like Australia. So the connecting of people is there's lots of people that need to get to back and forth to where their home is, if you will, or where their roots are. And so I found that to be, when as you were talking about that in our session, I thought that connection and connecting people throughout a large urban, like a large footprint of a country, and having to get to those big centers is very similar to what we find in Canada, which takes us to talk about that first regional airline. I think you said you were 19 when you first started your first regional airline. Talk a little bit about what that looked like. Like getting financing, doing the operations, like getting an airline, all very difficult things. How did you make that happen? And what stands out for you as formative lessons? Like, as you stuck with it, so you didn't quit after.
Right.
What stands out? What did you learn from those early entrepreneurial days?
Right. So Ian, it was again communities that didn't have air service, and they needed air services. And as you say, Australia is very similar to Canada, where you have the economic heartland that drives a lot of economic activity. But in most of these regional centres, you just don't have enough people to support sort of a regular airline service. So it's all about how do you make sure you don't put too much capital, because the service can't support a lot of capital, and do it in a way that meets the needs of the local community. So we started this airline. It was called T. Thomas Air Transport Systems. We had to put the T at the front because there was a big transport conglomerate called TNT that we couldn't be too similar to. And we started a service that went from Sydney to basically the southwestern region of New South Wales, that included country towns like Hay, Balranald, and Mildura, and then the Sydney to Mildura service was actually very important, because this was a big rural centre, actually on the border between New South Wales and Victoria, but Mildura was sort of basically closer to go to Adelaide or to Melbourne. And so what happened, there was good service between Melbourne and Mildura, but there are a lot of people who wanted to get to Sydney. So actually putting in the direct service rather than them having to fly to Melbourne and connect to get to Sydney. So and then in terms of how we actually pulled it off, we leased aircraft. I had a very strong financial supporter who happened to be my father.
That happens with lots of entrepreneurs and lots of startups.
Yep. And because I was a pilot, I actually flew the line. Yep.
Well, like all small businesses, you do everything: chief cook and bottle washer.
Yep. And also, again, the times get it where passengers would get on, and one of them said, "You're not old enough to fly this plane, are you?" And I said, "Absolutely."
So when you think back on those things, and as opposed to an aha moment, what's your maybe a sliding door as you're closing, in airport or airline parlance? What were the decisions or risks that fundamentally shifted the trajectory of your journey? Because you must have got to some points of said, go, no go. What are the do I keep, do I make this investment? Do I do, because there's risk in every business along the way. Doesn't matter what you're doing, you get to points and you have to kind of say yay or nay, and what's the risk profile. Talk about some of those. There must have been a number of those as you're growing that business, and then I'll maybe we can talk about that in context of your latest venture.
Right. Well, from a personal perspective, the sliding door was when I started to fly, I wanted to pursue a professional career in aviation. So I applied to a cadetship with Qantas. And got through, but unfortunately failed the medical exam because of poor eyesight.
Oh.
So that, to me, that was obviously at the time was heartbreaking, but it actually said, you can be part of aviation without necessarily flying. There's a lot more interesting things that you can do, and hence that sort of put me on more of the, well, perhaps I should be, do more of the business side on the on aviation. And then the second one was really when we had this regional airline going in Australia. It was interesting because the government down there changed the regulations where in the old days you could actually fly all these services with just one pilot. And, the economics are always marginal, but just like what has happened time and time again for the airline industry is government just sort of brushed a new regulation in that required on a 8-passenger aircraft, two pilots, and it just killed the economics. And the thing was, and that was really the epiphany for me was, and something that I'm actually quite proud of is we were in the process of actually investing another, at the time it was about $500,000 on actually buying new aircraft to better serve the regions. But when this requirement on the two pilots came in, we said, no, the economics just don't stack up. So we literally, as I say, we were one of the few airlines in the world to actually leave and stop flying by our own volition because we said the numbers just don't stack up.
Well, so
sorry, so that to me has made it. You've got to have a sustainable business model. And you can't kid yourself. I mean, a classic example is what we're trying to do here in the region. Is you get these new carriers that come in and they say, everyone's tired of paying all these high fares. Well, the fares are high because the costs are high, and the costs really are high because of government taxes, fuel, et cetera. But they come in and say, we can take all of this market and, all of these other people are idiots in the industry and we'll be successful. Well, guess what? If you actually looked at their business model, it just doesn't work. Whereas we look at what we're proposing to do here in the region is we're not about saying we're going to sort of come in and everyone, if we come in, we're going to
You're not saying you're the ultra low cost carrier that's going to be the cheapest.
No.
You got to say a reliable service that gets you where you want to.
Yeah.
It's the experience isn't as painful because air travel has become painful.
Yeah,
people hate traveling.
Yep.
I mean, they like where they're going. They don't like the part in between.
The experience, absolutely. So, so this is all about how do you. So here in particular, and this is the thing that gets me so excited about the region is. We're not here to create a market. The market already exists here. There are 3.4 million passengers a year coming out of the region.
At Pearson.
No. Out of the region of Waterloo. The region of Waterloo catchment area generates 3.4 million passengers a year. That was in 2024. We think with the population growth that's happened in the region, it's probably closer to about 3.6 million now. But the problem is, and God bless the airport, the airport's done everything possible to encourage airlines to come here. The problem is, given the current dearth of air services, literally 87% go to Pearson. Yeah. And that's the problem. So what our view is, we're not here to stimulate the market or grow the market, etc. All we're saying is if we have a stronger customer value proposition than what exists today, then we can tap into those 3.4 million passengers. So our plan over the next, say, 5. So the current capture rate at the airport is about 13% of the total market. So it's about 400,000.
People that are flying in this catchment area, only 13% of them are flying out of the
Waterloo
airport.
Kitchen, out of the airport. So our plan has us that if we can sort of keep, our plan over the next 5 years is we think we can grow that from basically, again, by flying to the right destinations, we can grow that from 13 to about 50%.
Yeah, and that's great. And there's no one that wants to get on the 401 and go to Pearson. If they can avoid it, they would. But they it's the do we have a reliable service? Because we've had airlines before. We've talked about this. American Eagle was here, flight to Chicago, 85, 86% load factor.
Yep.
So it wasn't people weren't using it, but it's a business, and they
Yep.
could make more money flying that same aircraft from Akron, Ohio, I think it was,
Yep.
to Chicago. So that's what happened. Okay, so because I want to keep get it focused on this, the philosophy that the operating philosophy what you bring to the business when you step into it is, so maybe go with that. It's customer experience, it's competitive pricing. I wouldn't say that you're not trying to be lower.
No, it's fair pricing.
Fair pricing.
Yeah.
So I mean, those are some of the philosophies. But talk about some of the things that you've taken from your philosophy and your years of experience that you're bringing to the relationship with Pivot and or Connect Airlines, using Pivot, being based here. Are all of those things some of the things you've learned as now your operating philosophy of saying you got to be where your market is? Talk about how you're connecting those things.
So Ian, there's obviously a lot here. I mean, people say the airline industry is very complex. It's actually not complex. It's actually pretty simple. But here are some of the critical components. Number one is because you want to come in the lowest risk way possible. So you basically get aircraft that are perhaps older aircraft, but they're still perfectly good aircraft. Older aircraft where the lease rates are a lot lower than getting a brand new aircraft. I mean, that is a recipe for disaster. I mean, all these new airlines that come along with their brand new aircraft. I mean, put this in order of magnitude, those brand new aircraft are probably costing them something like about 400,000 Canadian a month to lease, whereas ours will be significantly below that. So number one, set yourself up for success by making sure that your overhead costs are very efficient. That includes the leasing of the aircraft, the corporate overhead, etc. So number one. Number two is fly where people want to fly. I mean, serve the market. If you serve the market better than the alternative, guess what? People will come to you. So make sure you do I hear constant stories of people saying, oh, we need the air service. And part of the issue with the air service, why we didn't use it, is because they gave us the service in the middle of the day. And of course, that's useless. So again, a great example here is time. Again, our objective is meet the needs of the business traveler and connect the region to the world. So in order to meet the needs of the business traveler, right destinations, places like Montreal, New York, Ottawa, Boston, Chicago, etc., but do it at times of the day that actually allow people to do a day trip. So, that means like a 6:30 a.m. flight out of here, out of Waterloo Kitchener to Montreal, gets you there at sort of like 8 o'clock in the morning. And then, there's a return flight at 8:30 that allows people from Montreal to come to the region for the day. And then the return flight is in the afternoon, in the evening. So, you can come back. So
you fly out at 6:30 a.m. out of Waterloo region, and your return flight comes back at 6 or 7 o'clock at night. And so you say you've got a 9 or 10 hour working day in New York. Can still get back and forth. You don't
Absolutely.
have to
stress. I mean, you can leave your house at 6 in the morning and be at the and basically again no requirement to be there an hour in advance. Blah blah blah. I mean, again, one of the benefits of the airport. So the next one is make regional flying great. The biggest benefit of regional flying is you fly out of really, really convenient airports. And you couldn't ask for a better example than the Waterloo Kitchener Airport. I mean,
the investment that Regional Council over the last decade has put in there, saying they're building for the future. And we've seen the service pick up, like the number of travelers. It's just getting something to stick. I mean, an actual scheduled airline, and there are some there, but has been the challenge. But those are many of those things are beyond the control of the airport itself. But they've made the investment. So this is
to attract airlines,
and that's what attracted Connect and Pivot here.
Yeah. So part of that customer experience is it's not just the airport, but it's the onboard experience. So all 50 seaters only have one class, which is 50 seats at a 30-inch pitch. Well, guess what? What's different about Connect is that we have a premium economy section. So we'll have 12 seats or 3 rows of seats that'll actually be at an additional 4 inches of legroom. And I mean, 4 inches of legroom actually makes a difference. So, but you get the extra legroom, but what else does that mean? It means that, you get priority boarding, priority security, et cetera, but you also get a meal. I mean, where do you get on a 1 hour flight and you get a meal? So and obviously it's not going to be a hot meal, but you'll actually have a breakfast breakfast box that'll be really good, and it's a better experience. And the other thing too that we're planning for, and to be confirmed, but the other thing too is having the best Wi-Fi on the aircraft. There are no 50-passenger regional jets flying today on scheduled service that have Wi-Fi. And we're going to have true gate-to-gate Wi-Fi that, again, makes this experience better than what people get on the regular airline
when
service.
You get on most airlines in economy, 30 inches is a dream.
Yeah.
You would die and go to heaven if you had 30 inch, let alone having 34 if you're in a premium economy.
And the final component, which is probably one of the most important components, is I don't care how big you... So I spent a lot of time in the industry developing these win-win commercial partnerships. So, working for the alliances, working for airlines on developing bilateral agreements. But my view, and again, having done this for some of the largest airlines in the world, is I don't care how big you are. In this industry, you need lots of friends.
Yeah.
And so, again, your classic startup is, we're going to go head-to-head with these major airlines. No. The whole concept around Connect is most of the major airlines acknowledge that they can't adequately meet the need of smaller communities with these smaller aircraft, and they want to get out of that business. They really want to get out of the business. So we say, this is our core business, but we want to partner with you. So that's one of the other benefits of the Connect service is that, we're not going to have a frequent flyer program because you don't want to earn points on a Connect Airlines. I mean, et cetera. However, if you have any, and it just won't be one airline. It'll be, you could participate in any of the major airline frequent flyer programs when you fly on our flight.
And the other part is Pearson is getting to the point where they really only want to do long-haul domestic and international flights. They just don't have enough capacity.
Yeah.
So regionally, this is why the business community is so excited about this airport and the investments is, we're getting all-day two-way GO service. The idea is that there would be, hourly service into Toronto, and we're already doing the planning, which I know you're aware of, which gets us connected to Pearson of having a spur that you could get on here in Waterloo and end up at Pearson. So some people could come from Pearson to do a flight from Waterloo or vice versa, and that makes the appeal of this could be a place that you fly in. You might fly to Pearson, but that connection will make those partnerships. The Behind the Business podcast is made possible through the support of our title sponsor, Gore Mutual. Proudly Canadian, Gore Mutual has stayed true to one purpose for more than 185 years, insurance that does good. It's the reason they exist. They believe that when we focus on being good, doing good, and spreading good, we all thrive together. We're grateful for their continued commitment to our local communities and the positive impact they make every day. For more information, visit goremutual.ca. Okay, so you've talked about a number of the operational discipline, right? Of saying know what you are. You're not ultra low carriers. Yeah, it's great. Their first sticker price is next to nothing.
Yeah.
Except for if you want to breathe or have take on a purse
Right.
or do anything, because everything's added on top of that, and the experience is not very good. It's cheaper, but it's not a great experience. How do you struggle the operational discipline, right, of saying there's a business, like you have to do the things to kind of be able to make money or break even to start, with the innovation? Because you're talking about innovation things of different aircraft, certain knowing that you're going to talk to your customers about what markets they want. Like first meeting we had, there was the Codfather, Ron Cottle from Cottle's Catch Seafood. There's a lot of people that go to Halifax. Well, you didn't immediately say, hey, look, it's not one of our first number, but we're open to that. Like if we think that there's a market there, that's the sort of thing we'd add. How do you keep the operational discipline with that innovation or new markets? How do you balance both those pieces?
So again, it gets back to having the right aircraft that gives you the operational flexibility to flex into new routes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the great thing. Pivot currently operates great aircraft, the Dash 8 100s, 300s, but unfortunately they're limited in their range and they're slower. And so part of our goal is, again, have a 5-year plan and make sure that you start off with the right foundation. And the right foundation is the CRJ 200, the 50-seat regional jet, because that can, again, the economics aren't great because it's a regional jet, but it gives us the operational flexibility it works commercially on a YKF to Montreal, but it also works on a YKF to Winnipeg, to Halifax, to DFW, to Miami. So that gives us and the thing is that you always run your models to say, okay, how do you sort of splice all this together? So no, again, a lot of it's sort of the market analysis, but the innovation is ubiquitous, because the innovation is all about the Connect brand is all about a better regional airline service.
Yeah, and delivering on what people are asking for, right?
Yeah.
And getting, and I think the other part which I like in the name is, and we talk about this, Waterloo Region punches above its weight.
Yep.
In context of business for a lot of reasons, but Connect Airlines, we need to connect to the world.
Yep.
Without having to go to Toronto, and that's what's exciting for us. Okay, so for regions like Waterloo, and we've talked about this a little bit, connectivity with the rest of the world, talent, innovation, the business growth, they're all interconnected. Talent attraction, etc. What does smart aviation strategy look like? I mean, we talked. You're excited about. You've got the Waterloo Flight Center, which is training aircraft professionals.
Yep.
You've got the University of Waterloo and their
sustainable
flight school or project. What are the things that for you start to look like smart aviation here that you can build upon here in Waterloo Region?
Well, I mean, part of it, Ian, is, as you say, the region already punched well above its weight, and in particular, tapping into the local flight school as a channel to get pilots, because as we grow, we'll need more pilots. So, working with the local flight school in terms of that development, really excited to work with the University of Waterloo's the Waterloo Institute of Sustainable Aviation, because one of the things that we haven't really talked about much here is we have an ambition as Connect Airlines to lead the world into zero emission aviation, and done a lot of work over the last 5 years, and we're on a path to that. And the bottom line is that it's basically electric hydrogen aviation, and the University of Waterloo is all over that. So we're very keen to work with WISA, to their Sustainable Aviation Institute, to basically make the region the epicenter of the inevitable move to zero emission aviation.
Well, this is a great goal, and it needs to happen. And people aren't going to stop traveling, so we better make it as environmentally sustainable as possible. Okay, and I want to come back.
Well, and actually, I would say, Ian, that our focus on sustainability is not just on environmental sustainability, but believe it or not, the move to the move away from fossil fuels to fuel aircraft to electric hydrogen is not only environmental sustainable, but believe it or not, it dramatically reduces the cost structure of the airline and makes it financially more sustainable.
Well, that's even better. It's a win-win. Okay, and I want to come back to something that for those of us that live here, over the last 20 years, YKF, we've had regular service to Bearskin Airlines to Ottawa, and then Ottawa and Montreal. We had service to Detroit with, I think it was American
Northwest.
Eagle. Oh, Northwest. It was Northwest. We've had Chicago with American Eagle. So we've had scheduled service. It's always been well utilized, but it never has stuck for some of the reasons that you've talked about. But so help kind of paint the picture for how Connect Airlines can help restore and strengthen those connections and make them stick.
Right.
I guess is what. And you've described some of that, but why are you convinced that you can succeed where other and I think I know part of that is it's a different structure, but kind of paint that in piece, put all those pieces together and say like you're invested here. The airport itself has invested. Pivot and Connect are investing here. Just kind of carry that through, because I think that's one of the things that people will be a little concerned about or want to hear is, how do we know that this is going to be here? The stickiness.
Yep. Well, as you say, we've already made it's not as if we're about to make the investment. We've actually already made the investment of actually basing Pivot at YKF, and for very, very rational reasons. So number one is, and we really do want to be the homegrown airline. I mean, our success is totally aligned with the success of the local community. So again, it's sort of how do we best meet the needs of the 3.4 million passengers who the bulk of which are going to Pearson today. So number one is we know there's a lot of business travel out of the region. So let's make sure that we fly to the right business destinations. But more critically, let's do it at the times that people want to do it. So that's number one, is just meet the need and the needs of the travelers. And the second one is, again, how do you connect to the world? So let's make sure that we fly at the right time so that people can connect to, fly to Montreal and then connect to the European bank that gets them, all of those great destinations in Europe out of Montreal. Similarly, and it's sort of quasi-connecting but also business is, obviously there's a huge technology sector here. And they have affinity with the West Coast, with the West Coast of the US, like San Jose, San Francisco, etc. It's really hard to do a direct service between YKF to the West Coast. But boy, if we do a really regular, frequent service from YKF to Chicago O'Hare, that gives you great connectivity to the West Coast.
And having those and setting the schedule here so there's a seamless connection in O'Hare.
Yeah, so that you don't arrive at O'Hare and then you've got to sit there for 6 hours for the connection to San Jose. No, it's actually timing the flight so that that you actually have that seamless connection. And I know there's sort of a little hesitation with sort of having to go through US customs and the fact that YKF doesn't have pre-clearance. But again, we will streamline that process. I mean, most of the business travelers here, I would assume, have Nexus.
Many do, yeah.
Yeah, and that gets them seamlessly through. And let's just say that we'll do things at Chicago O'Hare to make that make that connection seamless.
Okay, now, over your 50 years, which I still think is remarkable, you've seen a lot. Deregulation, crisis, mergers, 9/11, COVID, take your pick, transformation, all kinds of things. What do you think the next decade looks like broadly for aviation? I mean, we're going to continue to see the growth of and people, and I don't think there's any shortage of people wanting to travel, whether it's, and I think there's a growing sense that Zoom calls are great, but people thrive on person-to-person
absolutely.
connections. That's
Absolutely.
where business gets done. So business, the travel isn't going to go away. Where do you see the industry and aviation going in the next decade?
So number one, I think people realise that the low cost carrier phenomena is done. I mean, you look at I mean, the model isn't sustainable.
Yeah.
And and Southwest is a great example of that. You can start off as a low cost carrier, but you over years become a legacy carrier, and your costs converge with the major carriers. So I think that there'll be less new entrants in terms of this low cost carrier. Number one. Number two, I think there'll be greater collaboration with the airlines to give people global connectivity, because that's what people want. People want the global connectivity. I think the third one is the dilemma of the major carriers is that you can't be all things to all people. And I think it's those carriers who are brave enough about their core business proposition to say, there are parts that we just can't do well, and regional aviation is a classic example. It's very different operating a 50-passenger aircraft versus a 350-passenger aircraft, on long haul versus on short haul. So I think you'll see more, let's call it specialized airlines that actually are very focused on meeting specific needs of a community or of a customer segment, etc. And then finally is the industry has to decarbonize. And I'm sad to see the amount of money that's going into SAF. Because I don't see SAF as a solution.
What is SAF?
Sustainable aviation fuels. Yeah. And again, it gets back to government regulations. I mean, I'm on the board of Iceland Air. We're a European, part of the Schengen. We're a European carrier. So therefore, we're feeling the pain of SAF in that the EU has dictated that any uplift from a European airport this year, at least 2% needs to be at SAF, which is at a much significantly higher cost.
Yeah.
So I do think there needs to be, I use the term, at the moment Europe is using a stick to try and decarbonize. They've got a punitive carbon tax, they've got the SAF requirements, etc. You need the carrot. And to me, the carrot is the region, and again, fits in the regional aviation space. If you look at the migration to electric hydrogen, which I think everyone has now recognized is the first step on that path, and the technology exists today to reconfigure the current turboprops into hydrogen electric. I see much more that evolution happening. And interestingly enough, is because the airline industry will be a huge producer and consumer of liquid hydrogen, the airports can actually become hydrogen hubs and have additional benefits for the local community. I mean,
that's always a problem with hydrogen is the scale. Well, scaling it. And I mean, sometimes the technology, it will catch up, but the scaling of having, the hydrogen available where you need to have it.
Yeah, and Ian, that also gets back to the point is you need to do it in a economic, rational way. And the classic is, to your point, producing hydrogen through electrolysis is really, really expensive depending upon what your electricity costs are. But one of the cheapest ways to produce hydrogen is natural gas.
Yep.
Now, under the rainbows of the hydrogen, which we'd all like to get rid of, it's grey hydrogen. Well, guess what? There is technology today that allows you to pass natural gas through a process where the offtake is either carbon black or graphite, and you get green hydrogen. So let's use the resources we have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't go and put even more tax on the grid, because at the moment, as you know, AI and the data centers are really a huge drain on electricity. Take resources that we have, and Ontario has an abundant supply of natural gas, so use that. Therefore, you actually significantly reduce the cost, and then you need to obviously have a liquefaction, and that's where you put the capital, is the liquefaction of the hydrogen.
Who would have thought the John Thomas and the airline industry are going to be some of the greatest environmentalists for sustainability? I mean, I hadn't thought of it in those contexts, but when we do talk about energy. We all know that the big industrial users are the biggest contributors: transportation, manufacturing, travel, and so all that needs to be done. So that's fascinating. Listen, okay, before we've gone over, I'm way over time, but we still have to get to our rapid fire questions. But last thing before we do that, what is the best way for people to help as Connect starts here? So whether you're a business person or someone that does a lot of travel, how can people support you making the right decisions for delivering service in this area? What can people do to be helpful?
So just tell us, go to www.connectairlines.com. There is a feedback thing on the website. So we'd love to hear people's views on that. And that's also a way that we can keep them informed as our plans solidify.
So things that might be helpful, where they might travel from, how often they travel, maybe some price sensitivities of saying I would travel if it was in X, Y, or Z. So some of those types of things are helpful data points for to understand what the market is saying here, so that you can make your decisions and sort of stack and schedule things.
Yeah,
perfect. Yeah. Okay, now this has been a fascinating story. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, but this podcast I always ask a series of questions which I think kind of get to leadership, right? It's fascinating to hear how leaders in their industry kind of view things, and there's no right or wrong answers, but I ask the same set of questions to everybody. And so if you could go back and tell your younger self something, what would it be?
Have self-confidence.
That's a good one. It's a good one. We all.
And it's funny. I walk around looking at kids today, and I want to say, just believe in yourself, because you really are great.
Yeah.
And no one's told you that yet, but everyone has their greatness, and just believe in yourself and go for what you believe in.
Okay, who, as you think back on your journey and where you are today and what's yet to come, who inspires you most?
My wife, Paula.
Yeah?
Yeah. She's a hell of a lot smarter than me.
Marrying up is always a good
Absolutely.
thing.
No. I definitely married. And she says she knows what I got out of the relationship, not much what she did. But my wife.
That's great. Okay, if you weren't, and this is hard to imagine, I said this, you've been in it so long, I mean, I find it hard to imagine that if you weren't in your current career, what would you be doing? But what would you do if you weren't in the airline industry?
I'd be a singer.
Really?
Yeah. I come from a very musical family, and I love music.
That's the first time we've had singer on there. That's awesome. Are you reading a book? Do you listen to podcasts? What do you do to kind of stimulate your brain or shut off?
No. So I read books on history of countries and states. So Robert Mitchum, Texas, Hawaii, love those books.
My old boss he loved those books. And great big thick ones that would take a long time to get through.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
So they're almost historical, but they're wrapped in a story.
Yeah. But for anyone who's interested in aviation, history of aviation, another great one is Empires of the Sky.
Empires of the Sky. I'm going to take that one on.
Yeah.
Empires of the Sky. Okay, and one more time, just if someone wants to be in touch with you or connect or pivot, where do they go?
www.connectairlines.com.
Connect Airlines. Listen, John, it's been a fascinating couple of days. Appreciate you coming. And you do live in Texas, right? Is it Houston?
No, Dallas.
She's a Cowboys fan. Boo. We're Buffalo Bills fans in this part of the world. thank you for coming up here, doing our session and taking time to record the radio show and now doing this. We want to tell the story. This is an important development for Waterloo Region, for our broader community, but certainly the business community, to make this successful, because it is connecting Waterloo Region to the world, and that's going to be important for particularly as we grow. We've talked about this at that session. We're going to be 1 million people in 20 years. It's 300,000 more people in your customer base.
Yeah.
We've got to be ready with the services and connections globally that people will expect when they live here. And Connect Airlines, we hope, will be a long and valued partner in that process. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Ian. Appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Behind the Business, proudly presented by Gore Mutual, insurance that does good. New episodes drop every Thursday, so be sure to tune in next week. You can also visit greaterkwchamber.com to catch up on past episodes anytime. We'll see you next time as we continue to go Behind the Business.